Hey everybody, welcome to the Mi Duole Podcast. Stuart Anderson here. Just a short introduction to episode 11 before we get into our interview with Matt Rider and Creighton Rider. We're grateful for them and thankful for the time they spent recording Creighton and Matt's journey through A.L.S. Creighton was diagnosed with A.L.S. back in 2007 when Matt was in high school. And Jake and I interview and talk to them about the journey they've had. Pretty fun to hear about the things that they've shared, the things that they've learned. And Creighton even shares some pretty special stuff at the end on what he's learned and advice that he would give to the team or anyone listening, really. This is applicable to anybody, not just cyclists. Pretty special interview that we're grateful for. Thankful to connect with the Rider family. Also express gratitude to everybody, all of our sponsors and team members who make this group Utah's oldest cycling club and team. We're grateful for all the support and love that this group gives to us. So thanks for listening. We hope you love this episode as much as we did recording it. All right. Thanks. All right. Welcome, everybody. Grateful to have you joining us. I'm here with Jake Cook, Matt Rider, and Matt Rider's dad, Creighton Rider. It's the four of us on. A couple quick announcements real quick. Don't forget kit pickup February 4th at Hangar 15. We've got so much stuff happening at that pickup from 6 to 8 o'clock. So hopefully everybody will be there. And then team camp March 4th through 7th down in St. George. Jake has got a private group me chat that if you're not on, text Jake and say, I want to be on that. That's where all the updates and messaging and stuff is happening. So grateful for Jake for planning that. So that's it. So welcome, Matt. Welcome, Creighton.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me on today.
So if you notice, that is Creighton's electronic voice. I don't know. Is that the right word for that, Matt? What's the correct word for what that is?
Yeah, so he has a piece of hardware called a Toby, which is like a big, thick iPad. Yeah. And it basically takes any text and outputs this computerized voice. We were playing with different accents earlier, and we were going to go with a country accent, but we ended on this basic one today, unfortunately.
So Matt's dad, Creighton, was diagnosed with A.L.S., and we're going to hear his story today. So we're excited to have them both on. I'm going to turn the time over to Jake to introduce Matt and share a few things about their friendship. So go ahead, Jake.
Absolutely. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here with CR, the legend CR, and also, Matt, a lifelong friend that I've grown up with since I was, a little baby. So it's fun to have them both on here. This is going to be a special episode, and excited to kind of share the stories of both these wonderful people. So I've got a little bio here that's been written by Matt's significant other, Maggie, his beautiful wife. And I'll just share it with you. Matt was born in 1991 in Salt Lake City, Utah. He attended East High and was the Leopard's favorite seminary president. Raised by mountain-loving parents, Matt learned early on the joys of exploring the outdoors, especially while on skis. She says, think of how a child's face lights up when you see their presents on Christmas morning. Times that by 100, and that would be the equivalent of Matt on a good ski day. Is that true, Matt?
I would venture to say that's probably true.
Good.
Outer Park. Give me one of those and I'm happy.
There you go. Well, she continues on and says, while he still holds onto this dream of being a pro skier, he ultimately chose to pursue soccer. He grew up playing locally across the country, winning multiple state championships in club and high school. In 2009, he was then recruited to play for BYU, where he competed in the PDL Professional Development League. After his freshman year, Matt served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Lima, Peru. After his mission, he played soccer for another 3 seasons while pursuing his bachelor's and master's degrees in information system management. As he would say, Matt, masters in Googling, right?
Exactly. I'm very good at Googling questions.
During school and his off-season, he tried both road and trail triathlons. Despite soccer being his only mode of training at the time, he ended up on the podium for his age group in each of his races. His real love for cycling, however, grew over the years as his family and friends participated in the Saints to Sinners bike relay to support his dad's fight against A.L.S. He met his wife Maggie in 2012 and married 4 years later. They are now the proud parents of a squishy 9-month-old baby boy. Matt works for Weave Communications as a tech lead and software engineer, playing with lots of O's and ones all day. Matt joined Mi Duole in 2017 and competed in Lodija twice, riding on this team, and the friendships it created are a huge part of Matt's life. Also, Kid Pickup days are always a happy day in the Rider household. When he's not riding, he's either busy trying to make his son laugh, pushing his son on a bike, busy trying to make Maggie laugh, trail running, skiing, or calling Andy Welch for advice on some random house project.
She nailed it.
I gotta put that on my bio.
Can you confirm that, Matt? Is that true?
Yeah, let's see how many times I've called Andy in the last month.
Man, Andy, Mi Duole's favorite.
Andy is the salt of the earth.
The salt, just the best, man. That was a good bio. We should copy and paste that on LinkedIn. That was good.
Dude, I need to save that for my obituary. Jeez.
Nice.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, that's Matt. So, and that's his wonderful wife. So
very cool. Well, Matt, maybe we can meet you first and then we'll meet your dad next. Is that a good plan? Let's just maybe start with you. We've got some questions laid out. Do you want to tell us how you connected with this team and started riding with Mi Duole?
Yeah. So back in 2017, like right after I had graduated, we had been riding every summer kind of in preparation for Saints to Sinners, just kind of like around the neighborhood, get a couple big mountains in a year. And then after that, I had all this time after school, and Jake had already started riding with Mi Duole, and he was always talking to me about it. And near the end of that summer, he's like, dude, just come ride with us one morning. And so I came on just a normal Emmy ride. I show up and it's Jake, Stu, Andy, Chip, Jameson Rice, and John Love. Not like the chill pace group by any means. And so we're going up and we're chatting, like everyone's like, we're all talking. And then we get to the switchbacks. And I had never been dropped like that in my life. I was so embarrassed when I finally like pulled up to the top. Everyone had been there for like 2 minutes. And then and to make things worse, I'm in like a floral kit. It's like, oh gosh, I look like the biggest Jerry out here.
Oh my gosh.
We've all been there, Matt. We've all been there.
It was rough, but I was somehow allowed to come back and keep riding. And then that summer, Jake and I rode Lodija together, and yeah, I've just kept coming since.
Okay, Matt, how about you share your favorite Mi Duole memory? I know you and Jake did Lodija for the first time, and then you've written the note Porter's Fork.
Yeah, so I don't know why, but it was like the spring of 2018. Everything was super green.
That's right.
We were doing it like every Tuesday. It was a Mill Creek ride, and then we got to the top, and then all of a sudden, I think it was Dave Sharp was like, "Well, time for porters." And we were like 25 people deep.
That's right.
And we all rode up porters together. And it was, I don't know why that sticks out, but that was so cool to me, just seeing everyone just churning up this hill on this tiny road, and it was just super green. I don't know why. That's always been one of my favorite memories from the team.
That was cool. And then you and Jake did Lodija that year. Was that your first time, 2018?
2017 was the first year.
Okay.
So yeah, it was like right after I joined, and it was just Jake and me in that group. Oh, well, Cha and Edward Smart were riding at the time, but they weren't on Mi Duole. And I think Harmon was our group too.
Yeah, we just got dusted by Cha and Ed. It was great.
Yeah, dude, it was brutal. So it was like Jake and me riding together the whole time, and Will Moringa too, actually. Shout out to Dutch Cheese Breath.
Cheese Breath.
And yeah, that was just brutal. And there were all these just low moments like everyone else has. My favorite part though was right before the race. we're getting ready, and Jake goes, "Dude, we don't have any of our food." Jake made all these rice cakes, and we had stayed with one of Andy Welch's buddies in Logan in some neighborhood, like 15 minutes away from the start line. And we literally have 30 minutes until the start. And so it's like, okay, I'll go get them. And due to some impressive driving on my part, I was able to go back, pick up 6 rice cakes that we barely ended up touching, but we got back and we started the race on time.
Wow.
True story.
Hey, sometimes you don't plan for that early race nutrition. Sometimes it gets forgotten.
It was a great time though.
Yeah, let's hear about maybe some of your history, your family histories, and your dad's A.L.S. That'll be a good next piece.
Okay. Yeah, so I was raised in a family of cyclists. I mean, we were never competitive, but like biking was always part of my childhood. You know, I learned how to ride on the University of Utah campus when, as early as I can remember. And we were always on mountain bike trips, things like that. And then when I was in high school, my dad was diagnosed with A.L.S. And I'll let him speak to it a little bit more about the actual condition. But my second year of my mission, while I was gone, my family decided to, as a way to show support for my dad, they entered into this race called Saints to Sinners. And this race was basically started by someone else who had a family member that passed away due to complications from A.L.S. And so they started this race to raise awareness about the condition. And it started in 2009. I think my family joined in 2011. So it's basically a relay race. It starts in Salt Lake City and goes to Las Vegas. So I think it's 500 and something miles, 530, somewhere around there. How many? 520 miles. And it's broken down into sections that you can then distribute across your relay team. So yeah, they first started in 2011 and they had 2 10-man teams, and it was really just built up of people from around the neighborhood. So family, friends, neighbors, people from the ward, things like that, just kind of a ragtag bunch. And
anybody on a BMX bike?
Surprisingly not. Although we've seen other interesting types of bicycles out there. We've seen some beach cruisers.
Unicycles?
I haven't seen unicycles out there.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. But yeah, we rode it. We've ridden it every year since. Last year it got canceled due to COVID, but each year the team got bigger and bigger. Just more people wanted to join and support and kind of experience the highs and lows of sleep deprivation and riding in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, it's been super. It was kind of like the pinnacle of our year. Like that was our event, just because we got
that was like the Lotaja, right, Matt? That was like the Lotaja for the whole group in a sense.
Yeah, like all of our friends, like none of us were riding competitively, and so it was like ramping up was always so fun. And then as we grew bigger, we split the teams into kind of like the adult team and the younger team. And so it was like a lot of the guys my age. We had like my sister's friends and everything. And it just grew to be, this really fun group of people. Our team eventually got up to about 110 people, which is like a fifth of the race group.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, like, so there are a couple dualies or duelles or doilies,
yeah, whatever,
that are also on the CR team. So Jake, Jason, Paul Taylor, Ben Naylor, Andrew Williams, Janie Bowen, Evan Cantor, Clark Davis, and then I'm sure we'll get some more joining soon. But yeah, like we've had a really good group join and support my dad in this, and so we have a lot of good memories.
And I mean, you guys initially because Creighton rides don't you guys ride together, right?
Yeah. So I don't know, Dad, you want to say anything?
She captains most of the ride for us. And then Matt takes over in last leg.
So Lisa, my mom, captains for most of the race. She'll kind of ride with him, and then I'll jump in for the last leg to kind of do that last push into Vegas with him. And we'll talk about that part more.
And Matt wasn't Creighton he was one of the only rider with A.L.S. riding in the actual race, wasn't it?
No,
So that's
Yeah.
something special too about the race.
Everyone
Was Creighton was the one, riding this race and riding along with him was something special. I mean, that's, everyone knew who Creighton was because he was the man. He was the man riding the race. So it was a special treat.
Yeah, it was really cool. And you'd see other people from the other teams, they'd start to recognize like, oh, that's Creighton. And so it kind of spread around the race. And so people kind of got to come up and meet him and my mom, and it was really cool. It was a really fun experience.
Nice. Should we move into race? I want to hear some of these race stories. This has got to, I mean, I've seen Instagram posts of the idiocy that takes place with this group of guys. Do you want to expand here and actually put it into a recorded format? I mean, is this a smart move for us?
I don't know if we can talk about everything, but we can definitely touch on some. So as we split up the group, as it got bigger, so we had the youth team and the adult team, and then even the youth team, we got up to like 50 people. And so that eventually had to be broken up. And so we kind of developed, everyone's in different cars, but we had this group of friends within it. And we kind of, one year we just decided to rent a 15-person van, and we threw just a bunch of sweaty dudes in there together. And it was later labeled the bro van. And so it was like a frat house on wheels. And we probably can't share a lot of what goes on in there, but honestly, one of my favorite memories from Saints to Sinners was there's a leg where you're going up out of Panguitch, you're going around kind of Panguitch Lake and climbing up in there before you drop down into Cedar City. It's the King of the Mountain stage, and we would always do it, all of us together, all of the younger guys together. And one of the legs starts out, and it's like a 1,200-foot descent, super steep, and we're all just, everyone's competitive, everyone's kind of jockeying for position. And so we're all in this pace line, kind of jumping around each other. And then out of nowhere, Ben Naylor comes up in a Superman position. So feet unclipped, legs extended off the back, fully supine, like completely extended, going like 45, just blazing past all of us. So dumb, but so epic. It was so wild.
It was that was a crazy time. That was
wild.
One of my memories of just the bro van, essentially just the bro van, was we rented a van one year. It was kind of a friend's van of a friend, and come to realize midway through the race, didn't have any air conditioning. And to hear 15 dudes just stuck in this van, and we are going through the Valley of Fire, and there's no air conditioning. And so to fix the air conditioner, try to create some airflow in the van, we had to go to Walmart in, I think, Mesquite or somewhere, and buy fans and wire it throughout the van so we could get some airflow through the van. It was a sweaty mess, Matt. Do you remember that?
Oh, that was brutal. And it's not like we're showering in between legs. Like, we're just getting in our bibs and just squishing in next to each other.
Getting gooch sores. You know how it goes. Just getting that.
Gooch sores. Oh, man, it was brutal. Yeah, and then add sleep deprivation on that. So, like, no one's getting fussy, right? Like,
what a blast.
Yeah, it was a good time. But my parents did want me to talk about some of the more special pieces.
Yeah, let's hear it.
At the end of every race, people will kind of start just like jumping on whatever legs they want, just to kind of ride together. Like, we're not we're participating. We're not racing. Like, we're not necessarily competing in this, because our riders on our team, we have people riding for their first time.
Right.
And then we have people who have, ridden categorized races. So there's a big spectrum on our team. And so, yeah, people were just kind of jumping in, riding just so they can ride with the people they didn't get to ride the rest of the race with. But yeah, near the end, there are a couple climbs as you're going through Valley of Fire. And we have all these photos of, you know, my mom and dad climbing up a hill, and there are people riding on either side of the bike, pushing my mom's back.
Wow.
And it's always been like one of the coolest parts of the race, just feeling like all of our friends' support. And for me, on leg 30, it's the last climb out of Valley of Fire before we descend into Henderson and finish the race. And just being able, you know, we'll start on a descent and then we start this climb. And by that time it's 105 degrees. And my dad will talk about this, but, you know, I'll have Jake and Jason right up on my side, and then they start pushing my back. And then I have, you know, the rest of my guys, they'll just take turns coming up, and they'll come and push my dad and I for 30 seconds, drop. And it's just so cool to have that kind of support. Just with everything, you know, my dad goes through with A.L.S. It's a really special moment. Like every year, that is my favorite time. And it's selfish because, you know, I get to feel all this love, but it's so cool to see what my dad has done for people. And so, yeah, it's always been really special to me.
Isn't there something weirdly special about those awful experiences that just bind people together forever? It's just like, it just happens, you know?
It's so cool. I mean, and it's not like the riding's any harder than what we do just like on a weekly basis, but just sleep deprivation and everything. And then everyone's just kind of whittled to the bone just from, you know, weather, from the crazy heat, from crazy rainstorms.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's just so raw by the end that when we get, like, everyone just cries and hugs. It's super fun.
Best.
It's a really special finish.
I also think, Matt, that, you know, having your dad being, you know, the person in the race actually riding it with A.L.S. takes it to another level. And I think, you know, people realize that as they're riding throughout the race, they're riding for actually, you know, they're riding for someone. I mean, every team is obviously riding for someone, but having someone physically in the race that you're riding for and being able to ride next to them, like you talk about, this leg 30 is something that's, it's euphoric, man. It's just, you can't put it into words because, I mean, until you're there, being there, you know, you may not have A.L.S, but we can feel that connection with your dad and with you and everybody else there. And it's something that I will always remember, and everyone who's been there will remember because of those, you know, those feelings and those experiences.
It's been really cool.
Nice, Matt. Let's meet your dad. He's like been sitting in the wings here, just like waiting. You want to introduce him and maybe tell his story?
Yeah, I can do a brief introduction, just kind of like starting from A.L.S.
Okay.
And he can give a little bit more background after that.
Okay.
But yeah, so my dad, Creighton Rider, he was first diagnosed with A.L.S, that's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease, in 2007 after he noticed some deteriorating strength in his right hand. For that next year, they went around seeking second opinions, but they finally accepted it was A.L.S in 2008. So A.L.S is basic disease where your nerve endings die, and so your muscles stop firing. And then, Dad, you might be able to explain this better than me. I should have written out the actual explanation, but it's basically, yeah, your body just kind of withers away since your muscles aren't firing. It doesn't affect any cognitive ability. It's all just neuromuscular.
Right.
So your nerves die off, which means your muscles die off, which means they shrink, and you just kind of are stuck there.
But one interesting thing, Matt and Creighton, is that, I mean, Matt's told me this many times on rides, that Creighton's an outlier, right? I mean, for how long you've been able to live and survive with A.L.S is pretty miraculous.
Matt, I'd be interested to know, you know, as CR, even CR too, you can even comment on this, but, you know, as CR started, you know, started with his thumb and started this process of A.L.S happening, Matt, like, what was your thought process? And CR, maybe we can get into this with you. Like, you know, tell us about this story. Tell us about how, you know, your thought process and how your emotions started playing into it. You know, I'd love to hear that.
Yes, my dad he'll walk through some of his feelings as they accepted the diagnosis in just a minute. So I can talk about kind of what I was going through. So I was a senior in high school when I finally found out. I mean, so I knew something was wrong because like we were in Powell with you guys, and he was having trouble getting up on the water ski just because his grip was gone. Like he just didn't have that grip strength that he used to from rock climbing. And then he started dropping stuff a lot. And so initially we thought it was just a pinched nerve. And then I just remember, I was, the fall of my senior year, my parents pulled me in and were just like, hey, they just basically told me it's A.L.S. And I kind of had an idea of what it was, but I was still kind of just dumbstruck and kind of numb at first. And, then after talking to my sisters, it was then like, that's when it kind of really hit and the floodgates opened, and it was just kind of like, what do we do? Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know anyone else who had it. I mean, one of our soccer coaches from high school had something similar, but that was like my only notion of it. So yeah, it was pretty rough. And then literally within it was probably like a month later, my dad told us, okay, we're going to Mexico. We're going to go climb Mount Pico de Orizaba, which is the third highest mountain in North America. It was just like, okay, we got to do this. And so time definitely became of the essence after that. There's kind of this sense of urgency where we got to start knocking out all this stuff because we don't know how long we have. And because like Stu said, it's basically 3 to 5 years is what they tell people once you get it. And so there's no way to really map out what you have left. And so, yeah, we went down, we knocked out, well, we almost got to the summit. We were knocked off due to weather, but then he came home and then he went on to climb every peak in Utah, every county high point. And there's a big Salt Lake Tribune article about him. And then he went to Europe, climbed Alpe d'Huez with only one fully functioning hand. So it started in his right hand and then moved up his right arm, then went to his left hand. But so while he only had his left hand and just kind of a weak right arm, they went and climbed the Alpe d'Huez, and he'll talk more about that. But the cool story about it all, like as I was here, before my mission, it started in his right hand, so he immediately learned how to do everything left-handed. And then as it moved to his left hand, he learned how to do everything with his feet. And then he slowly learned how to do everything with his eyes, and he's basically typed out all the responses today with his eyes, which is extremely hard. Like I've tried to type out a 4-word sentence and it's infuriating. It's so hard. And he can write out these long paragraphs, and it's, so yeah, I mean, it's been really cool to see him adapt and just kind of see him, play the hand he was dealt. And that's always kind of been the part that stuck with me, is that you learn to adapt, you learn how to change, you deal with it, and you move on. If you just sit there moping, it's nothing's going to get better. So it's been really powerful to kind of have this in my life. Obviously it sucked, but there's been a lot of really cool things that have revealed themselves. So and after that, sorry, to actually get to the biking portion. So in 2010, 2011, a bunch of our family and friends raised some money to build a custom 2-seater bike, which we've ridden Sinners. It's a tandem, so a normal seat on the back and then recumbent on the front, so my dad can sit there and pedal without having to put any weight on his arms.
Now, how heavy
so
is
that
this
was
bike,
kind of like,
Matt?
What?
How heavy is this bike? Explain to everybody.
Oh man, so when we first got it, it was probably what, in the 40s, Dad? 55 when we started. And then as it kind of progressed into his legs, and his legs have gotten weaker, we got an electrical assist on it, which added another 25 pounds. So this thing is like a war machine when we're riding it. Like, it is so heavy. And so before, like with the electrical assist, it kind of has a governor on the downhills now. But before, when we would hit descents, oh my gosh, we would be mid 50s and, the snap of a finger. We would fly through stuff. But yeah, we've had so many cool memories together on this bike. Like obviously all of Saints to Sinners, but one summer right after I had gotten back from my mission, we decided to try and climb Big Mountain together on it. And yeah, it was brutal. Like pushing that thing up, like even with two of us pedaling, it was brutal, but we got to the top. And then yeah, my dad will talk about the descent. It was pretty scary, but especially, I mean, you're on the no control over what's happening. And again, he'll talk about it, but it's just like on the back, I'm just chilling, hanging out. I'm in like a mountain bike position, so I'm upright. I'm all comfortable. My dad's just at the mercy of me, just flying around at 50 miles an hour. But no, we've had so many cool memories. Like despite how crappy A.L.S is, we've had a lot of really amazing experiences and a lot of really fun memories.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. I know that Matt and Creighton have put together some paragraphs that Creighton has put into his voice machine. Matt, do we want to play those, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, so we can break it up a little bit. So this next part is kind of we talk about my dad's favorite memory, cycling, or since he's at A.L.S. And then we can talk about just kind of like his history with bikes and how A.L.S has kind of played into it. And then we'll talk about some life lessons he's gained through his fight against A.L.S.
Nice.
So yeah, Dad, you wanna tell us about your favorite memory riding with me?
Yeah.
My best memory of Matt. By far, my favorite riding story with Matt is riding leg 30 of Saints to Sinners with him. You see, leg 30 comes after being on the move for the past 30 hours, a few hours of poor sleep, and a blistering hot morning. You are physically, mentally, and emotionally drained by that point. Then there's just one leg to go. It's a rather short leg, but there is a decent amount of climbing involved, and by 11 a.m., it's always over 105 degrees. But here, as father and son, we start off with many of our teammates alongside. Everyone feels the weight of the moment, but Matt and I feel the love and the bond between us the most. He's literally pushing me to the finish line and making sure that I get there safely. The others pedal up alongside and take turns helping push for a moment, and then they rotate out. In the end, though, it's just me and Matt, and I can hear his heavy breathing just behind me and feel the stress on the chain as he pours every bit of his strength into getting us to the top of the climb. We tell each other through tears of our love for each other. It is truly a magic moment that we have enjoyed together for many years. That emotion carries through the next few easy miles to the finish line, where by that time every one of us is bawling. It is really symbolic of the support and love we feel from all our friends as we fight A.L.S to the finish.
Special. Thanks, Grady.
Dang. So good.
Yeah, that leg is it's hard to not break down when we're riding. Like it is so special being able to ride with all of our close friends, and then at that last push just kind of be me and him just kind of slugging it out together. And yeah, it'll always be like one of my favorite memories, and I hope I can share that type of memory with my son.
I love that. Thanks, Creighton. Thanks, Matt. So good.
I've asked him a couple other questions just about biking in general. So yeah, Dad, take it away.
I've always loved bikes. I got my first mountain bike in 1980. It was a hardtail, hard front 18-speed with simple caliper brakes. The shift levers were just the old friction type, way before index shifting appeared. But boy, my friends and I had lots of fun. I started serious road cycling around 2003, though not nearly at your levels of mileage or watts. When my A.L.S symptoms started presenting in 2007, I kept on riding. My right hand was affected first, especially my thumb, and that got to be a problem fast. I struggled with that as long as I could, then took a page from Paul Taylor's playbook and moved my right shifter to the left side. It worked pretty good for a while, until symptoms progressed. In 2009, we went to Europe with another couple, and one of our to-do list items was to tick off the Alpe d'Huez. For those of you who have done this, you'll remember the markers along the route where racers hit the switchbacks too fast on the descent, crashed and died. I was very mindful of this when started back down. By then I was unable to pull the brake levers very hard, especially my right one. I had to really anticipate each turn and plan how I could bail if it was coming into a switchback too hot. But it was awesome. When I got back home, my wife convinced me to hang up the bike for good. It was a sad moment for me. Over the next year, I started looking around for some way that I could get on a bike again. Although my hands and arms were shot, my balance was fine and my legs were strong. I finally found this contraption on the internet that was just what I was looking for. It was a normal bike on the back, with a long extended front over a 20-inch front wheel, with a recumbent seat on top and boom sticking out the front for the front rider's pedals. It looked like the bike for me. I called the bike maker, a guy named Steve Belenke in Philly, and he said there was an owner who had one in Utah, in Logan. My wife and I drove up there to see it, and the owner let us take his for a test drive. As Matt said earlier, I was able to get one for myself through the generosity of family and friends, to which I am forever grateful. The bike arrived with little time to train before the start of the 2011 Saints to Singers relay. Unlike a traditional tandem, I had my own derailleur on front, so I could pedal at a different cadence than the person on back, and even stop pedaling altogether if I needed to.
So I wanted to talk about switching the brakes. This is a random tangent. But he swapped the brakes on his mountain bike while I was on my mission. So I came home and then I went to go ride bobsled, and I was not aware that the brakes were switched.
Yes.
And so that first section, right when you drop into bobsled, it's that steep, super technical downhill. And on the first bank turn, I go to kind of drift into it by, gripping my back, my rear brake. Unbeknownst to me, that is now my front brake. And I'm over the turn into the trees, like immediately. So it was a good introduction to what my dad had been up to while I was gone. But
Nice.
anyway, sorry, random tangent.
Good tangent.
I'm not qualified to tell you what it is like to drive a bike from the back, but it's not easy. You're in charge of brakes, steering, and keeping the bike balanced when you are stopped. Imagine riding your bike with a wheelbarrow full of cement in front of you that you cannot let tip over. On the front where I sat, all I had to do was pedal and not fall off. We never went down while we were riding, but I got dumped off several times when we were stopped and lost balance. A few bumps and bruises, but that is about all. I was lucky. I have to admit though, riding on the front had its scary moments. When you're riding, you realize that you are not in control at all. You're just sitting there with your life in the hands of whoever is in the seat behind you. Case in point, Big Mountain. Matt alluded to it earlier. I enjoyed the climb, but the descent not so much. 2 men on a heavy bike equals 1 heavy load. When you point that load down a steep decline, like Big Mountain, you need a lot of braking power to stay in control. Well, at that time I only had little caliper brakes on the bike, and my rims got hot fast. I was sitting there in my little sling seat with nothing to hold on to, thinking, if this front tire blows, I am SOL. I had Matt pull over to make a game plan. We decided that if a tire blew, he was supposed to run the bike into the sit hill rather than risk going over the edge. We then doused the rims with our water bottles to keep them cool until we got down past the switchbacks. It was terrifying at times, and you had to learn to block it out. I learned a lot about trust and faith from these scary moments. But those moments of fear were nothing compared to the joy I felt every time I rode. The sun in my eyes, the wind in my face, the smell of the trees or pastures, the adrenaline on the descent, and even the sweat pouring off as we charged a difficult climb that sucked my lungs dry. Well, that was living. Man against the elements. I miss that today, that's for sure.
Awesome, Creighton. So cool.
So cool.
I think we put Matt in the front of this thing. I'm gonna pump him up Big Mountain.
We we've talked about it. Jason and I used to think we were going to show up late to a ride on immigration. We like just blow past everyone in that thing.
We're doing it.
But man, it is terrifying sitting in the front.
Well, and Matt, hasn't your mother, even Creighton can even nod his head on this, hasn't, I mean, your mother's tipped over with Creighton on it several times, hasn't it? And it's been so hard to pick up.
Oh, both of us, dude. It's there was one time we were going up immigration and we pulled over by the firehouse to like wait for someone, and I didn't realize where we'd stopped. It was kind of a slant, and so I put my foot down and the bike just kept going, and I just like poured him out, and he can't brace himself with his arms when he falls. So I just poured him out like onto his face on the cement. It's like, oh crap. And then he and my mom have done it a couple times. Stopping is not easy. Man.
Oh man, Creighton, that was so good. Thank you for sharing all those things. I know we've got in my opinion, like what I've been waiting for the ending here, which is really interesting to talk about, which is life lessons learned that you two have learned together, stuff that's changed you and made you, I guess better men. I guess that's life. But I'll kind of leave this up to Matt to share some takeaways that you've learned, if that's okay, Matt and Creighton.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a few takeaways I have learned through living with A.L.S. A.L.S. is a nasty diagnosis. They gave me 3 to 5 years to live and told me there is no cure or effective treatment for it. Worse, I knew nearly nothing about it, so there was a huge fear of the unknown for me. Things were pretty grim at that point. Life was seemingly spiraling out of control. We told our family and friends and shared a lot of tears. I still didn't want to accept the death sentence of A.L.S. I was still pretty sure that it may have been a pinched nerve in my neck. I had some more MRIs done, but alas, my neck was fine and there were no pinched nerves. Gradually, the truth sunk in and I was left facing a pretty bleak future. How long do I have to live? How quickly will I become incapacitated? What do I need to do to get my affairs in order? It was pretty tempting to curl up and pull the covers over my head. But running from adversity is not a great solution, especially when I realized that the world is going to move on with or without me, and there was plenty of life still to enjoy. Every one of us have something in common: we're all going to die. I think that's an inescapable fact. So everybody should be thinking about this from time to time and adjusting their course accordingly. Face it, you're going to die. So am I. I received a diagnosis that was a death sentence. They couldn't tell me when exactly, just about average life expectancy for an A.L.S. patient. That's all I had to go on. Meanwhile, I could get hit by a car or die in an earthquake. And so could you. So there's one lesson: life to the fullest. Every day. From this came my motto: live till you die.
Matt, what do you think about your dad saying that? I mean, do you live by the same motto?
Yeah, I mean, when we first did the diagnosis, our first reaction was kind of like, okay, everything has to be done like it's our last. And then as he's, we made it to the 3 to 5 years, and then we made it past the 5 years, and now we are almost at 11 years. And so it's like, you can't always keep saying like, okay, today's my last, but I don't know. We've just learned to kind of live in the moment instead of having to be like, okay, we're not going to be back here. Now we're just going to live it like this is the only time that there is, and we're going to enjoy it. We're not going to project to the future. We're not going to say this is the last time, but it's affected the way we do everything as a family. We're a lot more present, and we just focus on living now. I don't know how else to put it. I don't have an eloquent way of saying it, but yeah, it's definitely made us a lot more present in the things we do, and it's definitely made everything a lot more enjoyable because we know we can't take it for granted.
Very cool.
It's awesome, man.
All right, let's do this next one.
Another thing I have picked up along my path is that I have developed empathy for others. Sure, we all have some level of empathy within us, but it took me getting a terminal illness myself to grasp the idea that I am not alone. There are many around me that are suffering too, physically and emotionally. Everyone is dealing with some struggle. It just may not be visible to us, or we aren't really trying hard enough to see. Empathy allows me to see things from another's point of view, understand what someone may be feeling, to be less critical of others, and to expand my own love for and kindness towards others.
I don't want to embarrass your son, but this is one thing that Matt just excels at as a man. You know, riding with Matt and being a friend with Matt, he is just filled with empathy for others. And whether it's a ride or, I mean, just life in general, what a great job you've done raising a young man. Can I call you a young man, Matt?
Yeah, I guess.
Who excels at this gift of being empathetic towards other people. Just an incredible thing to see in your family. So,
Yeah, one quick thing. I mean, first off, thank you, Stu. That means a lot coming from someone like you. But the 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 thing about ALS is, yeah, it has opened our eyes. I mean, everyone kind of runs into this at some point in their life where you realize like everyone's got their own thing going on. Everyone's got their own trials. Everyone's got their own challenges they're facing. And again, as much as ALS has sucked, it has introduced us to some of the most amazing people. Some people who are facing ALS themselves, but other people who are dealing with other types of terminal illnesses, or just like crappy situations in general. And so it's been really eye opening, you know, to have to go through this kind of pain, but it's also been really, I don't know how to explain it. It's been like a really cool experience getting to meet other people who are dealing with similar or just crappy experiences as well, and kind of grow with those people.
all right, let's move on.
Point number 3.
As ALS is called a progressive degenerative neuromuscular disease, it means that things are going to continue to get worse for me. My needs are ever changing, and that is challenging. Whereas an amputee has to deal with the loss of a limb, he will do the rehab, learn to use a prosthetic, adapt to life without a limb, and continue to dial things in. In my case, the situation is always changing. Managing the symptoms is a constantly moving target. Solutions to problems are temporary as the condition gets worse or the disease targets another area.
Matt, do you want to talk about those slides?
Yeah, I mean, I can touch on them real quick. So a couple years ago, my dad gave a presentation to some medical students about his condition and how he was learning to adapt. And he walked through a lot of the things he was having to change in his life to and learn how to adapt. So, for example, one problem was losing grip strength in his right hand. So some of the solutions he did to adapt, he made to adapt to this. He created these little hand hooks that he could strap to his arm and then be able to grab things. He also made an adaptive ski pole grip, which basically like Velcroed his hand to his ski pole. And then he lost wrist strength in his right hand, so he couldn't hold on to his handlebars. So then he built this customized wrist brace so he could still mountain bike for a little while. He couldn't grip utensils, and so they found these bendable, easy grip utensils. You know, he had loss of arm, hand, and hand strength in his right hand, and so he learned how to be left-handed, like I said earlier. He couldn't ride on a bike because his arms stopped working, and so he found this tandem bike so he could ride in a recumbent position. And I mean, there's this huge list of things he's been able to, of these solutions so he can adapt to ALS and basically overcome like each milestone of the disease. And so adaptability has been a huge part.
I'd second that too, Matt. I mean, I think for years we had been going down to Lake Powell as a family with the riders, and it was so fun always to be down there with Creighton because he was like the ultimate MacGyver. He would always jimmy rig something, make something work, make something fit, or the angles of the ropes had to be certain angles, and I think this word of adaptability is perfect to describe CR because he is one that is always adapting to the circumstances, the conditions, the environment. I mean, another example I would share is when we would ski with him, he had trouble keeping his neck straight up. So he would tie his helmet to a a rod that would hang up behind his out of his ski jacket to keep his head straight so he could see. I mean, now he's riding around in a little kind of chair with hooked to a one of those boards, those footboards that people I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now. One of those
Hoverboards.
A hoverboard. He's made a little bench hooked to a hoverboard that he can use his feet to drive around with. I mean, again, CR, you're just super impressive and amazing in every way. And this bullet point of being adaptable is incredible to watch from afar and something special. So
Thanks, Zeke.
Let's look at the communication issue a bit more. For the first few years, I was fine. My voice was unaffected, and I could still use a keyboard. As my hands weakened, I couldn't type, so I adapted by switching to drag and dictation, and suddenly I could write as fast as I could speak. But after a few more years, I couldn't speak clearly enough for the software to understand me, and I had to then find another solution. I started using an on-screen keyboard to type with the mouse, and you can imagine how that slowed me down. After I lost the dexterity to move a mouse, I started moving the mouse with my feet. And now, I use what's called eye gaze technology to type and to speak. I type by looking at letters on the screen. It is what I'm using right now to speak to you. You can see now the need I have to constantly adapt to new situations.
All right, and this is the fourth point.
I used to love to play the guitar. I rarely played for anyone but myself, but I took great pleasure in this and could spend hours learning new and interesting pieces and practicing over and over. As you can guess, A.L.S. quickly brought an end to that pastime, as it affected my hands first. Initially, the lack of control with my right, strumming or picking hand left me to play one-handed, which isn't impossible, but in my case was pretty worthless. My friend P found me a cool guitar pick that I did not have to pinch to hold, but alas, I could never get my thumb to act coordinated enough to use it. So rather quickly, my ability to play my beloved guitars came to an end. That was depressing. Another favorite pastime of mine was climbing. Rock climbing, ice climbing, mountain climbing, all of those things required arm strength and hand dexterity, all of which quite rapidly ebbed away as the A.L.S. progressed. My ever-loyal friends were hesitant to let me bail out of this great sport that brought us together in the first place, so a couple of years ago they pulled and pushed me up a favorite old classic, much to my delight/terror. It was fun cause I knew the climb was pretty moderate, but it was scary because the bony appendages I used to crawl hands did not do much to hold me onto the rock, so I was occasionally at the mercy of the rope I was tied to and the guy at the other end holding onto the rope. It was a bittersweet moment sitting on top, having enjoyed the climb, but knowing it was probably my last. That was depressing. The list goes on. Lake Powell trips with the cooks? Ha! Heartbreaking. Golf? Can't keep the club in my grip. Depressing. Tennis? The racket flies over the net. Depressing. No, actually that's kind of funny. Writing? Shaving? Frisbee? Drawing? Depressing. 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 Pretty soon, you can see that I could get overwhelmed with all of this. I'm not a Zen guy, but it dawned on me that I don't need to be weighed down or burdened by all of this depressing stuff and the negative energy that it brings. I'm floating through life like a hot air balloon, and there's a bunch of stuff weighing me down. So here's a thought, why don't I just let go and get rid of some of the ballast? Yes, I've enjoyed so many of these things immensely, but maybe it's time to move on. I don't have to be defined by the fact that I'm a skier, a climber, or play guitar, or can scratch my ear, or am a cyclist. There's so many other things to do, I just need to close some doors in my life and open some new ones. The weight and the worry about what you can't do anymore disappears, and is replaced by the excitement and anticipation of doing something new. Alexander Graham Bell once said, when one door closes, another opens, but we often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the one which has opened for us. So, learning how to let go and not look back has been a powerful lesson for me.
Incredible. Thanks for sharing, Creighton. Matt, anything to add?
I mean, I'll just butcher it because I'm not as eloquent as my dad. But yeah, I mean, the main thing is there's so much we could be weighed down by. And at first that's kind of what it felt like. But as we've kind of opened ourselves up to other opportunities, it's made for some incredible memories. We've been able to do a lot more as a family than we ever expected. And yeah, I think that quote by Alexander Graham Bell sums it up. I think if you kind of look back on what you're missing, you're never going to see what's open in front of you. So yeah, as crappy as it's been, and as sad as it is not getting to do a lot of these things with him, it has made it pretty epic for some of the other things we've gotten to do together. So
Awesome.
Jake,
Matt,
go ahead, Jake.
yeah, and Matt, what is, I mean, and even Craig maybe too, you know, what does the future hold? I mean, what does the future look like? I mean, what's your present state right now? CR, Matt, I mean, maybe you can talk for your dad. I mean, what are the current situations like right now?
want me to talk to that one, Dad? You want to try? So, yeah, COVID has sucked. COVID has made things a little bit more difficult. I mean, my mom and dad used to get out multiple times a week on walks, and we used to have friends over all the time, and not being able to have people come by as regularly has, made things a little more difficult. But again, kind of playing back into these things, it's like it just added to the list of all the other things we've had to let go, and it's just another thing we've had to adapt to. And yeah, I mean, we're moving along. He had a bout with pneumonia, which is basically everything just short of a death sentence for people with A.L.S, and he got through it. And so we're still kind of just taking it a day at a time. I mean, another thing, I don't know how many people on the team, I'm sure there are plenty who've had their fair share of family members with tough illnesses like this. And I also wanted to make sure we highlight the caretakers in all of this. So shout out to all the people who have helped. So like my mom, this is a full-time job for her now, taking care of my dad, and us kids kind of help where we can. So again, yeah, shout out to all the caretakers and everyone who makes sacrifices to help the ones they love.
Well, I really enjoyed being together specifically, for anything to just learn from Creighton. I've learned a lot, and, I hope everybody that's listened has maybe reflected a little bit about their own personal choices, and especially, relationships with those that are closest to them. That's one of the things I really loved and taken out of this more than anything. So I can't wait to push Jake up a hill one day on his bike and shed.
Yeah, we'll start renting the tandem if people want to kind of live on the edge.
Well, anybody, anything in closing here? We're kind of wrapping up. I just want to thank you guys. Anything else as we wrap up?
You got anything, Dad?
No. Thanks for having me.
We love you, CR. This has really been a treat, and some that's, I think for me, it's been hard. Just, it's over the last 10 years knowing you. I mean, I've known you my whole life, but just the last 10 years has been so fun to watch you grow. And even though you have this terminating illness, I mean, it's something that's been very special to watch, see your family grow, see your family get closer together, and even spending time with Matt. I mean, it's us looking outside, in, we only get to see a little snippet. And so I think having this podcast and sitting down with you guys give us a little bit of a glimpse inside the life of, Creighton Rider and Matt Rider and how they've dealt with it. And I hope those who are listening, there's people out there that obviously, are going through different trials, and we're so grateful for CR for sharing his story, and Matt for being on the team, and couldn't be more proud to call you guys friends.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.